There we go. All right, cool now? Yeah. All right. Oh, hi. All right, so I want to take a different approach on this because I figured a lot of people would be doing like the technical SE attacks. I kind of like wanted to switch it up and do actually in-face. So I'm like standing in your facility trying to get in. So I'm not going to cover anything technical, nothing emails, no like credential harvesting. This is all going to be pretty much face-to-face, which no one really discusses. There's a bunch of like misnomers that I kind of want to address today on how to do actual in-your-face SE attacks. Pretty much like all social engineering, it's not new. It's been around pretty much since someone wanted something from someone else. Nothing really interesting. Because as I was writing this, Eric inadvertently released his paper, so if you want to read more obviously on his stuff, he published his paper yesterday and it's out there. You can go on to CSO and read through how to do his attack, which is also in his presentation today. So most people think about physical social engineering. This is pretty much what comes to mind. You print up fake IDs and you buy uniforms off eBay and you pretty much try to walk in the building. A lot of what's not addressed is what happens after that, because at some point someone's going to question you. And a lot of people that I've been talking to don't know how to deal with the, oh crap, someone's actually questioning my fake badge or my fake uniform, what do I do now? Unless you're going to like one of Hadagny's actual classes where he goes through how to deal with the actual emotional aspects of social engineering, because that's where a lot of people get burnt. They just don't think about what happens when I get questioned. And Dave kind of touched on it at the end of his last presentation about how you appear and how your presence, how your emotional responses, because once you start getting flustered, obviously there are obviously physical manifestations that can blow your gig. So if you start getting, you know, kind of how I am now, because I hate public speaking, where you get nervous and your skin either turns really bright red, which I'm known for doing when I get nervous, or you get very pale. And any of that can blow your gig. So the beginning of this is kind of going to be rehashing a lot of what we went over today, but again, the focus is completely different. We're not really concerned with gathering emails because it's useless to us because we're not doing technical attacks. But for the methodology point of view, it's still the same. You're still going to figuring out who you're targeting. But what we're looking at is when we're going through our standard Google attacks for our awesome gathering, we're more concerned with picking out the key individuals that are in that target organization. We want to know who's in human resources, who's in charge of certain portions of the organization. We want to pick out certain people that may be able to help us without them actually knowing it. So when you go through your standard information gathering, again, from the physical side, you're more concerned with learning who are the important people that you can throw their names out if need be. So for this, I picked on a local company from where I live out in Pennsylvania. And I like to pick on HR because, as was pointed out several times today, they're usually the ones that are most susceptible to both technical attacks and physical attacks. They're used to being inundated with emails and phone calls, and most of the time they're pretty unresponsive. So when you're going through your social engineering gigs, you want to find out who's going to be the busiest HR person, and at least have that name kind of on the tip of your tongue when someone says, "What are you doing here?" You could throw out the name. Well, you know, I just got hired. You know, Karen sent me over here, and I'm supposed to be doing this. Blah blah blah. As long as you have at least a name for small organizations, it's usually good. Larger organizations that you're dealing with, like multiple branches, multiple facilities, you want to pick out lots of people. You really don't want to pick out the IT people. It's different again for this actual in-your-face as opposed to technical. Again, you kind of ignore the technical people when you're doing the electronic attacks. But for the actual on-sites, you want to have those names ready. So when you're going through your initial information gathering, you want to compile a list of all the interesting people at the company. And how you do it, of course, the same kind of query strings you do for any other offset attack. And common sources of information, pretty much what everyone's been saying all day. The only things I add in there is obviously make use of either Malteagle and NetGlove, and it gives you a wider base of information. Kind of automates gathering those important people's names. The only extension I'm going to put on that is because it's a social, actual in the face, where you're going to have to interface with another person. You really want to dig a little bit more and go through their social sites, not just to figure out who else is associated with the company, but what they're interested in. Because it's those interest points that actually spawn conversations. If you and I are sitting outside and I walk up to the company and I have to get into it, and you're outside smoking a cigarette, I want to know something about you so I can engage you in a conversation to get you more comfortable with me. So it's going to be instantaneous rapport development. And it has to happen within the first couple of minutes because cigarettes only last about 5 minutes. So you have 5 minutes to develop that relationship. So you have to know a lot about the people that are there. And if they sit in their Twitter feed, running out for a smoke, cool, they're going to be out there. So you learn a lot about them. Do they have kids? Are they married? Who are they married to? What are they interested in? They just go on vacation. You pretty much want to dump their entire life. And you want to do this for a lot of people that are actually at the organization because you don't know who you're going to run into. So as you're going through your USC assessment, you have to develop at least one role. Who are you there impersonating? Usually at minimum it's one, but for some places you have to develop multiple roles. When you're developing your roles, it's not only who you're there impersonating, but it's also your entire life history. Because at some point someone's going to question you while you're engaging them in the conversation. So it's like, oh, do you have kids? Well, do you? You can't hesitate. So your roles, even the background of your roles, have to pretty much come freely. So when we're sitting out there and you're saying, oh, where'd you go to school at? I actually got burnt on one of those. I'm going to throw a lot of burns because this is going to be a lot of background things you guys not do. Where someone said, well, where'd you go to school at? And I threw out a school name that I kind of knew but didn't really know the environment. And the person said, oh, I went to school there too. Crap. I didn't know the local bars in the area. So she started naming off bars, this bar, that bar. I'm just like, I have no idea. And it showed because my face went from this to like bright red. And that was it. So when you're developing your role, you're developing your backstory, make sure you can actually back that up. So when you go through and you have your conversations with the people, your whole role has to pretty much be a fake identity. So you have to know that fake identity in and out. Because at some point, again, someone's going to question you. If you can answer the questions that are supposedly your real life, you're going to burn that potential contact. Appearance completely varies. The best one I can give is there was one day where I had to test 3 different facilities. So 2 of the facilities were, jeans and t-shirts. The last one was different. It was 3-piece suits. So you have to plan that ahead of time. So when you're rolling out there for the day to start, do you have the proper attire for the entire day? So if you're going to roll out in jeans and t-shirt in the morning and knock out 2, and then go to the last one, you show up in jeans and t-shirt, and they're in 3-piece suits, you're done. Because there's an expectation for appearance. So you pretty much have to know that ahead of time. What I started doing is actually spending the entire first day surveilling each location. So I'll go out and I'll sit out there for a half hour, 45 minutes, watching people go in and out, getting a feel for how people are dressing at that location. Come back the next day, I'm kind of prepared. The only time that I got burnt on that, I went to one location, hung out for about a half an hour. People are coming in and out in 3-piece suits. It was an upper executive level location, so I said, okay, 3-piece suits is the norm. It turned out that there was actually an executive meeting happening there, and that wasn't the norm. It just happened to be that people were coming in from the actual executive building to have a meeting at one of the smaller locations. On any other day, they're actually in like slacks and polos. So of course I come cruising in a 3-piece suit, and everyone looks at me like, who the heck is this guy? So extended surveillance will sometimes help you just to get a feel for, again, make sure there's not that one-off or that one day that you just happen to be watching. Hygiene is important. This is great for now, but a lot of places you can't get away with this, and you kind of have to be aware of that. Clean shaven is usually the safe bet no matter where you go. Even if you're in jeans and a t-shirt, shave it off. Because later in the day you have to go somewhere else that they expect clean shaven and teeth brushed and not sweaty, and you've been huffing around all morning. It kind of all ties together. You have to be presentable as well as not stinky. Hygiene important, demeanor important. How are you dealing with the people? So if I walk up to Adrian and I'm like flipping out, there's no way that Adrian's gonna obviously want to have a conversation with me. He might flip out back at me. Yeah, you don't know. To go home. Sure. So how you deal with the people is just as important as how you dress. Realize that's going to vary based on every individual person. You have to learn to read that really quickly. So kind of getting a feel for how people are communicating, and it's going to vary every time you go somewhere else, whether it's by general locale or state. There's going to be variances in general demeanor and how people expect you to act and behave and dress. And again, something you have to research well before you actually get at the target location. So if you're going from where I live in Pennsylvania, you're walking out to like the middle of nowhere in like Arkansas, I can't just come walking in there talking with a Philly accent and dressed how I'd normally dress because it's not expected. If you have an accent, sometimes you can use it, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it'll flag you as someone who doesn't belong there. And this is where it starts to get the twist off of the normal stuff, because no one really thinks about this. Emotions are critical, and you really can't control it unless you spent a good portion of your life learning to study your own emotional inadequacies, which sounds kind of like psycho crap. But it actually is critical to every in-your-face engagement, because it's going to vary whether you're dealing with one person or two persons or three persons. Or if you walk into an office and you're talking to one person and 6 people come out of the room and they want to know what's going on. If you can't control how you feel, it could burn you. Because again, the minute you start getting upset or flustered, if you can't ensure that you're not going to change colors or start to get nervous or sweat, it'll blow the engagement. So learning to not only control yourself, but help you understand the other people. How are they feeling by just observing their facial expressions? Kind of like in the last slides that Dave did, trust or don't trust. Looking for emotional tics. Are they getting upset? Are they mad? Are they happy? They're trying to help you along with knowing how far you're getting with an individual person. One of the key things they have to remember is smiling. I like to pick on the guys because outside of you. We're always really nervous, especially when we first walk in the door, and guys are really bad at this for some reason. They think the tough macho thing works all the time because they do it at the bars and they can just transfer that over to dealing with everyone. It doesn't always work. So smiling is going to be one of the best icebreakers you're dealing with anyone, whether it's a male or female target. Just open with a smile. Because if you come walk in the door and you're pissed off, or you have the expression you're pissed off, it's going to offset them. So even just walking in, calm, smiling. This is the second one you want to remember. Names are important. It makes people feel special if you ask them their name. The general rule is use it twice. When you first start up the conversation, you ask them what their name is. When you're ending the conversation, by whatever, use their name. That's the two key places you want to use a person's name. You don't want to be using it in every sentence because it just seems like you're just spitting it out there just so you don't forget it. But to make the person feel special, as though they actually mean something, not that they don't, but for the purpose of us, we really don't care after we leave. We probably will never see them again, but you want to give them that assurance that, yes, you were important. This interaction, I'll remember it forever. And we'll be best friends. I'll send you a Facebook request. Use it at least twice. Ask them their name. Smile when you do it. Eye contact. This is the big one. Because a lot of people in this field don't like or feel uncomfortable making eye contact. Don't do what he's doing because it's a death stare. Because it makes me feel uncomfortable. Sure. Overusing the name, overusing eye contact. If you just consistently just stare at the person, it's going to freak him out. So, again, as with smiles, use eye contact, but don't just stare them down because it's going to freak them out. And once it freaks them out, you're done. Sorry, I had to use the girl's picture because I was writing the presentation. And it seemed natural. So relationship development, again, it happens quickly. In most cases, you have under 60 seconds to actually develop some type of relationship with your target. I'm not saying date the person or ask them for a date. It's not that. You just have to establish some kind of comfortable ground with the person so that you can get what you need, which is usually in the building. Again, the why you're doing it is because you have to get stuff out of the building to prove that bad guys can do stuff. So you want to do this quickly. Have your background information, what the person likes, doesn't like, what they hate, and play with it. Make them feel comfortable. Make them think they can trust you. Once you have that trust, you're open to go do what you need to do. If at any point, while you're talking to them, you start noticing that they're feeling uncomfortable because you're either showing disinterest or you start overstaring or whatever, or you just bring up a sore subject, which we'll go into in a little bit, you have to be prepared to stop what you're doing and try to switch your conversation or what's being discussed that's making them close up to start opening back up to you. And the signs are usually pretty obvious for anyone who's studied any kind of body language, where they start closing up, they start backing away, crossing legs, obviously, they just start ignoring you if they've been looking at you the entire time. So as soon as they start giving those signs that it's gone from positive encounter to negative encounter, obviously stopping whatever you're doing and trying to bring it back to the positive. Awesome. It's the APT. Yeah.
Is it working right now? All right, try it again. And I have no idea what happened to the damn clip.
I don't know. I blame it on the APT sticker.
But we do have to use the microphone, otherwise the camera won't pick it up.
Oh, okay. All right, so anyway, yeah, I'll hold it. All right, so for one-on-one, most people are pretty
Keep
comfortable.
talking.
Yeah,
I'll make you uncomfortable. Go ahead and keep talking.
just don't touch my junk.
Hey, big
Betty Crocker? No. Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right, so for most people who are... It's not going to work, Adrian.
I don't know. A little tighter.
1, 2. Okay. So for most people, one-on-one encounters, they could usually deal with. Everyone feels comfortable because you're dealing with one individual. You can kind of control the person. Control is probably a bad word, but I'm going to use it for now. Once other people start joining the party without your invitation, it usually goes weird, especially when you're talking to one person and things are going great, and then another individual walks up and he's kind of wondering what the hell is going on. It changes the entire dynamic of the situation. And unless you're prepared for that switch in dynamic, again, that's usually going to result in an end of a test, because you're going to start feeling uncomfortable and getting all sweaty and red, and it's going to set off bells and whistles. So you have to plan ahead and be able to respond to any of those changes. So if you're having a good one-on-one conversation with him or her and she comes over or he comes over or whatever, be prepared as soon as you see that person coming that it's going to change and adjust quickly. Of course, it's going to be even more, and everyone's seen this picture because Dave used it. Totally variant, where if you're having one person and she comes over and she's all pissed off and wants to know what you're doing there because you're now distracting 2 of her employees. So learning how to deal with her and him, and now she's pissed off and wants to know what you're doing there. If you weren't ready for it, didn't think ahead about what if 1 or 2 other people came over, again, end of engagement. So to this point, important things to remember. Body language is critical. One of the key points is don't talk more than you need to. And that's really important. You're not there to have conversations. The only conversations you should be having is to get them to talk to you. So get the person to open up, stop talking. Let them do all the talking. You're there to gather information. You're there to get in a door. You're not there to have a lengthy conversation about your background, because the more that you talk, the more you're kind of delving into your background. Eventually, you're going to reach a barrier of your role, not know what else to talk about, and that's going to kind of set them off. So talk as little as possible, but talk as much as possible, just to get them talking, to get them to feel more comfortable with you. Keep your emotions in check. Don't start freaking out. Even if you feel the engagement's going south, you have to give the appearance that nothing is wrong. There isn't anything really weird about this. You're just here having a smoke and you're going to follow someone in the building, or they're going to let you in, or whatever. An important one that I added in there after something happened to me a couple weeks ago is know when to walk away. I had one individual that from the immediate start, within seconds, she was already offset just by me walking up, smiling, and saying hi. Individual actually reached for a gun. So when that happens, just walk away. Don't even try persisting with that conversation. That was obviously an obvious example. Other ones, it's going to be less obvious, where she's going to get flustered, you're going to turn your back, and she's going to call over to the security department, and then you have like 6 security guards coming up to you asking you what you're doing there. Know when to leave. When you've overstayed your visit, just leave. All right. So outside of that, once we actually, if we've done our job up to this point and been able to talk to a person, they either let us in or we follow them in, or however you get into the building, your key goal is to get stuff. And just like with the technical stuff, you have to kind of define what the important stuff is, what's actually important to the business. Because just taking random pictures and grabbing stuff off desks isn't really going to affect them. So you have to look for the juicy pieces of information that are laying around, that are actually going to show that some bad guy could have done something that's going to severely impact the business. People have bad habits of leaving passwords on desks. That's great. What is the password actually used for? Is there more information that could get you onto one of the servers? Can you actually jack in on their network and actually try testing that password to see if you can log into something that's important? Are there open network jacks? Is it after hours? You have lots of time to spare. Can you just plug in and randomly just start popping servers? Do they have anything specific to the business that's really important laying out that their clean desk policy didn't properly address? The really important stuff, not just, oh, well, here's me sitting at your desk. Again, you want to pick out the really important stuff. Other things you want to keep there is, if you're using like your Droid or your iPhone to take pictures, bring spare SD cards. If you can, bring a spare phone, or actually bring a camera. There have been times where I didn't think I was going to get into places, and I only brought my phone, and just as I walked in the door, the phone decided, Droid being a Droid, it wasn't going to work. So it just shut down, and I kind of went, okay, now what? So carry spares all the time, because obviously Murphy's going to pay you a visit once you actually get in. Key point, kind of touched on before, shut up. Let them do all the talking. And just listen. Gather as much interesting information as you can. Especially if you're just like hanging outside and there's more than you and the other person, and people have to just babble. One of the great things when I used to work in DC was just sitting on the metro around other government contractors and just listening. Because you'd be surprised how much information you actually gather just hanging out on the metro station. So just hang out, listen, hang out in the employee area if you can find it, and just camp there for a while. I guess this is kind of out of order. While you're dealing with the people, there's a concept that I'm sure all you guys heard of called mirroring. If someone's having a bad day, you're having a bad day. If they're having a good day, you're having a good day. If they're having a bad day and you're feeling brave and you want to try to change their bad day into a good day, kind of empathize with them, coerce them or coax them into actually being in a better mood, because once you can do that, they'll kind of open up to you, and that'll kind of give you a better foot in to get in the actual door of the target facility. One of the key points I like to use is complimenting the target. There are good ones and bad ones. You want to try to keep the compliments positive. I've heard some really odd ones come out of some people's mouths as far as complimenting targets. One of the things that I guess I'm going to say as a don't do, keep the compliments professional. I've heard some compliments come out of people's mouths that were just totally not appropriate, like complimenting what a woman was wearing that day in very odd phrases. So you want to keep the compliments professional. Yeah. So I was the first compliment good, second compliment bad, because it'll probably piss the girl off if it's a girl target. All right, some other common ruses, I guess, that I've used that seem to be working well for me and others. Appearing distraught or overworked, just complaining about the employer. If your target is specific engagement, you're sitting outside, again, having a cigarette, just complaining in general about how your boss sucks and makes you work and you're going to be here till 8 o'clock at night, and they kind of empathize with you at that point. And it works in your favor than just kind of following them back in the building while still complaining about your boss. Something for something. Promise them something. You guys heard this one earlier with Dave, so I'm not going to touch on this one too much. Promise them t-shirts or iPods or whatever. It still works in physical. The overloaded is one of my favorites because it always seems to work no matter where I go. Typically it's carrying my laptop in one hand and my backpack in the other and walking towards the door, and usually people will be like, oh, hold the door open for you, and you're walking in the building, and it really requires no interaction whatsoever other than thanks. And some of the odd ones, I've actually had people where I wasn't even ready to start doing anything actually just look at me and say, do you need to get in? So just be prepared for that one because I wasn't. But it does happen on rare occasions. Obviously, the easy one is just following the target in the facility. Everyone knows the phone trick. You know, da-da-da, you're talking on the phone, and I'm too busy to actually talk to you, but I'll follow you through the door. Obviously, if you're walking into a building, opening the first door for them, and they're just by general nature, if humans like to be polite, you hold the door for them, they're going to hold the door for you, and you just follow them in the door, and you walk to the first vacant office and sit down and pretend you're working. Usually works. I hear some people that like to do the confrontational one. I'm not a big fan of it because I've been burnt more than I've had success with it, whereas trying to be very authoritative and demanding and telling someone they need to do something or let me in the building, again, I've had very little luck with it. It usually goes south quickly once they actually check who you are. And usually by the time you've already got interesting stuff, but it kind of pisses people off, which goes to the, yeah, you're right, I talk too fast. This is probably one of the most important parts of the entire social engineering engagement because we're all, for the most people who do this are going to be consultants. You don't want to leave a bad taste in people's mouths because you may at some point run into them again. And even though you were doing your job, if you were a complete tool about doing your job, they're going to remember you. So you want to try to always stay moderately professional and not irritate a whole bunch of people because it will come back to burn you. And once they find out who you are, when it comes like reporting time, for example, and you're sitting in the room and they're looking at you and want to like kill you, they'll remember you. So always try to be professional about it. Obviously, Eric and Martin kind of followed this one earlier and how it's not really effective, but I'm still going to say go with training to address the social engineering because a lot of people still don't have this as part of their actual security awareness training within their organizations. A lot of companies that I find don't really address social engineering. When I say that, they usually address the don't click on stuff, which is, you know, Boris's big thing, stop clicking shit. So everyone finds that. But a lot of the social engineering or social awareness training programs don't address, you know, if you see someone, okay, it's don't let people in the building, make sure no one tailgates you. But usually what's lacking is, okay, well, what do you do if you're walking around the building and you see someone and they don't belong here? Who do you report it to? And what do you do? And do you confront them? And you find that portion actually lacking from a lot of it. So I usually go back to, there needs to be more training on how to deal with, you know, the bad guys, social engineers in your face that are trying to manipulate you to get in the building to actually physically steal stuff from your organization. And as usual, I talked way too fast. Anyone have any questions, comments? I'm completely wrong, you know. I'm pausing because I'm trying to think of the best answer. I mean, it's going to start. It's general. Like first, it's just the environment. It usually comes down to environmental. We're a lot of customer service oriented, where, yeah, law firm, but still the front end of the law firm is still very customer service oriented. Be nice, smile, you can't confront people because it's considered rude. We don't want to scare customers away. Well, that's great, but there has to be a balance of, this is a public area, this is a private area. And people in the private area must be, company identification really displayed. If someone's not wearing identification in the, private area, there has to be some kind of challenge, and if there's not, well, eventually you're gonna get screwed. I mean, outside of that. What was the question?
Use your SE skills. Casually ask what they're doing there.
Right. Well, yeah, that's pretty much when I do a lot of the training. It's like that's the first thing. It's not even a rude question. It's can I help you? Can I help you with something? Can I help you find something? But yeah, it pretty much comes down to there's always a misconception of when I have to challenge someone, you don't have to pull a gun on the person. It's just smile. Can I help you with something? And again, it's the smiling aspect that I think a lot of people aren't grasping. It's like when you're challenging someone, you don't have to be a complete tool about it. It's like you're walking through here, you're bumping into people all the time, and everyone that I've run into here so far, and at other cons, we all smile. It's like, yo, what's up? And the same thing, why does it have to differ when you're actually at your job? I know maybe you're grumpy when you go to your job, and that could play into it too, but there's still you still have to kind of address people in a happy way. Because if you don't, then everyone's going to be pissed, and yeah, then you're going to have we don't want to do that, but even when you're challenging someone, challenge someone politely. Cool, that's it? All right, I'm done.